DPS Genshin Impact players, if they have a fixation to something, is to the large numbers and to the high damage of the teams. But we also know that in Karis Impact, half of the characters are actually DPS, because it's more than proven that a character is the waifu that does the most damage in the field and bursts everything, or the primordial classes Dragon Lord that drips you. He's more than proven, as he said he loves the players and prefers to see his character favoriting in the field doing all this. But how much is the maximum real damage you've managed to do on your account? I didn't do anything. I just broke the record of damage to my own store in the whole game with 1,238,000. That's here in screen with Kinish C2 specifically, and even with the improvement of NATLAN's future characters to contribute to the team itself. And today we're going to see and talk about the DPS of the best DPSs throughout Genshin Impact's history, and about all of the evolution of these DPS, and which have been the best in each region over time. Players' favorites, and how today there is very established a top of characters with more damage by rotation. So leave a good like, a good Bennett ulti, subscribe, leave a good comment for the algorithm. Thank you for enjoying and watching the video and the channel. Remember that it helps the channel a lot. It doesn't cost you anything, it's totally free. Position and recommends the video to explode. So 1,000 thanks to the team that's been thanking me. Subscriber with bell? Very good. Thank you very much. And we are going with the evolution of DPSs in Genshin Impact. Well, Genshin Impact started at 1-on-1. There were 2 carries. Dillo was there, and Keqing was on the permanent. At that time, they were indeed the best carries. A baby Genshin Klee came out. Clay powered Diluc directly, and we started the game with Power Cry. And in fact, the 1 also closes with Power Cry, the first character Anemo of the 1, Katsoi and Venti. Although this is not the video or its story, but it is one thing you will see that will be repeated over time continuously. And basically Klee as carry Pyro dominated 1 and 1.1 and 2, until the right of Leiyu's flashlights arrived at 1:30 door. And there, ladies and gentlemen, began the No Many Many content, because it was a version that many people expected. Even the same Chinese joined the company because the game already started giving you filler version. And as I counted in other videos, he changed plans as the project was a project for about 8 years. And it passed a project of more than 12, and almost calculated up to 15. So from 1.3, 4, 5, put stuffing up to 0.6 to drive away the output of Inazuma that was theoretically coming after 1.3, that in theory, I was going to come with Sima and 1.4 Inazuma.t. But this again is another story, because on 1.3 came Xiao and Hu Tao. Xiao tried to play in various ways at the time. Now you know that he is the most beloved character, and in fact he is the name of one of Hoi Overseas developers. And it's had 80,000 buffos, 2 dedicated supports, 2 sets for the character, and various weapons and equipment that revolve around him. But Xiao at that time did not even arrive to be one of the best DPS, as he had difficulties and did not have a team of his own. So at this point we stayed with Hu Tao. Hu Tao was the DPS par excellence, because previously there was already Xingqiu. There was already a super vaporized Hu Tao team from Xingqiu, official Songli De. And it stayed at that time as the best DPS of all one, stating that already known teams like the Nationals or Internationals of Tartaglia. Where really the damage what that was doing was Xiangling a sub-DPS out of the field. And in fact, there was a point in the creation of content, and specifically in Spanish-speaking, where there was some rivalry, some conflict and some controversy between the rotational damage that Xiangling and Hu Tao could do. And it was really fun, and it started learning in the Spanish-speaking community, but the DPS par excellence throughout the first Sierra and even Inazuma was Hu Tao. We go straight to Inazuma at 2, and I think many and many will remember the 2 carries, or DPS, that started the region and that remained the full goal of the entire region, as one of the most nervous teams in the history of the game. and at the same time dearest, and at the same time as the beginning of a pattern, which is repeated in all other versions of all Genshin Impact. We talk about the beginning of Inazuma with Ayaka, which also not only celebrates the 28th of September, which is the anniversary date of Genshin Impact himself, but Ayaka was a character that was already filtered and bonded from Genshin Impact's previous betas before one, and people had a brutal hype for this character named Ayaka. Disclaimer, many will tell me, Phil, you forgot about Ganyu at 1 next to Hu Tao, and the reality is yes, because the Morgana was used, the permafrost of Ganyu, but with Diona, Mona, and when Kazuha came out, for Kazuha before played with Venti. But he was more or less around the previous teams, but it was Hu Tao who really got popular. Ganyu was a little bit lingering in popularity. Now in Inazuma, we entered with the permafrost of Ayaka. That basically inherited the core of Ganyu's Morgana, and we had the Ayaka, Mona, Kazuha. And throughout all Inazuma reigned this permafrost of Ayaka. And besides, after Inazuma, almost at the end and beginning of Sumeru, it was, as I say, the most enerfied team in the history of the game. And today it is complicated. Let us get out, dust our dear Ayaka permafrost, and play it in the abyss. After 2 came out on 2.1, Raiden Shogun and his famous C2 with the Hypercarry team and the Raiden National, making the Raiden National literally no longer just one of the most powerful teams in the game, but of the most played, in my opinion, the most played team in the history of all Genshin Impact. Little more to say in Inazuma, because from here came other DPS like Ayato. Ito, with an interesting roof with Garuchi Neeks, came out Gelen as a Raiden National support as a new buff to the team itself, so that it had better ceilings, but really Inazuma was queened. It was totally surpassed by permafrost equipment of Ayaka in one of the halls of the Abyss, and a Raiden National or a Raiden Hypercarry in another of the halls of the Abyss. And all this was the goal of Inazuma until the 3 that was Sumeru. In Sumeru, it was very interesting how these carries brought. At first, the 2 initial carries that could resemble the previous roles were Shino and Tignari. But they have their story, and Sumeru was specifically different for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 to dot. Shino and Tignari didn't have their full teams really, and they couldn't play with the maximum real potential. He also later went out to the Hyzon, which, let us say, made the cores much more comfortable with the damage of Tignari and Shino himself. I mean pure cores of Hyper Bloom, which is in the end the teams that play the 3 characters. And motive number 2. The Dendro had just come out, and what Hoyoverse intended to do was give it to us softer, so that players learn, understand, and become familiar with all Dendro mechanics in Sumeru. Right in Sumeru we suffered a stop, and we received nothing more to tear off the most powerful carries, and there was also a small parallelism that we'll repeat and then see in Fontaine with a carry Dendro Tignari, another carry Dendro Alhyzon, and a comparison of power that later, as I say, will be reflected in Laini and Alekino. In Sumeru, bearing in mind that some of Sumeru we saw the entire team from both the Hyzon and Shino and Tignari. Until Furina arrived, she could not see her entire team. We also had 2 fundamental pillars that are to Hyzon and Shino, with the highest ceilings of the Hyper Bloom until later came Furina's Chlorine, and some more things, and in fact now, Gini as carry Dendro on Hyper Bloom roofs from Cone is nothing more, as I say with Jero, is still surpassed by the Hyzon. But we also had that goal, and those very powerful damage ceilings in Sumeru. Once Sumeru ended up and Lita, say a region, little more paused by the fact that we adapted to Dendro, and that almost all the teams were missing characters to complete. The teams, especially until Baiju in 3.6, and to be able to see complete cores, we arrived to Fontaine, and again, as I explain, we will see. There were 3 carries and not 2 Linnies who had an interesting nuke team. A little inconsistent, and reminded us a lot of Tignari and Shino, that they still did not have complete supports for their entire team. And we thought it might have a very high potential, which in the end wasn't like that. But Novilette and Ryozli also came out. Obviously for another video, because in the end it is not in the top carries of the game, and you know that he's finally working on Permafrost Core, but no better than Ayaka, and he's working on Melted Core over Burn. And now in NATLAN we are exploiting, and we are also analyzing this mechanics, but it seems that cryo characters will come. That in fact there is a cryo tribe in the NATLAN tribes that surely exploit better than Ryosley, also this dynamic. But King Novelet is here. Stop the world, stop the video editors, stop everything they may be doing, because we have to talk about the #1 DPS of the whole game. There came a character who at first in beta looked like a Goku doing a. Or you can also see it as a splash in the face of another platform that is not this, and was literally not studied. And few people anticipated the potential they might have in betas, and very few people commented how broken they might be. So far, once it came out in the game, we saw that it could be Sunny Halls. Many we thought it was just by the Bufo of the Abyss, and then he could do it over and over and over and over and over and over, and all the abysses and all the time, and to Chero with 4-star gun and to Chiyu. Noivilet teams literally roofed all Genshin Impact being able to play cores around him, both from Hyper Bloom. Like Electrocharge to some Hyper Bloom double reaction core, rather than repeating as some inverse vaporized core. About Burn that are little played, but with spectacular damage like above all the Monkey Core Hydro next to Furina Kazuha. And in the future, you will be able to play with Silonen, and literally Novelet roofed the game. Here we broke pattern because while Linny was more interesting, he didn't meet neither expectations of sale nor damage came out. Just like the Hyzen, Conti, and Nari, and they have their story apart, a carry Pyro that positioned itself as another of the Karis. Most powerful of all the game on Fontaine on 4.6 because on NATLAN is 5. Forgive me many numbers and the Genshin just like. That text, and in 4.6 Alecchino, another DPS, came out almost as broken as Novelet was at first, had a little less faith because they did not expect two characters with so much power. Creep Alecchino power Creepio to all characters and carry. Spyro previously mentioned Orifica to Gaming, who also came out on 4.4 and was a 5-star cover of a 4-star. Oyo Vezir realized we didn't notice, and he literally gave us a 5 stars in NATLAN because he said these pinches. Genshin players who just complain about everything and don't realize that we've given them a free gaming that's 5 stars disguised as 4 stars. Take a 5 stars and stop crying, child, as if friends mentioned Orifica to Gaming. But we have Alecchino, and again, as in all the regions, we have 2 apotheosic carries that have surpassed all the others. And Alecchino and Novelet, and including and giving honorary value, mentioned Orifica Alecchino, also that can also be used. Chasms here is the gameplay of the last Sunny Abyss by Alecchino, and many beads can do with it to Cheronos. Gave the 2 most powerful carries of the whole game, plus dependent on Furina, the Archon of that region, Furina of Sarkontes. Each region has a character that represents what is the Archon is the most broken of that age, and Furina is the representation of that figure of all the nations that later lore. You focus on that guillotine that I do not know how very well. Furina the Hydro Archon from the Natla arrival, and we have 2 carries again that are supposed to and can be seen to dominate the region, remembering that there may be more carries, and that there may be some carry of the same element that might improve one of the 2, like Alecchino happened to him with Lion, and or like Alhaitham happened to you and Nari. We have Mualani and Hirnichi that we know so far, and that we can deduce without knowing all the other complementary characters of both and the whole reel. Of the teams of both, we can well deduce that Mualani did not surpass Novelet, but that it does a very funny and interesting damage. But very few Mualani hits ago, we can deduce that it's going to get much better with Shilon in, and it's going to get even better with Mavuika. Natlan, Mavuika, and Shilon in, and here we will say your prime and see how far that team can get into the thigh. Top 5 game teams in my opinion can perfectly, and you can play with Nahida instead of Emily, and we have here Niche. The other carry, Dendro and Niche from Cone, already improves the Gizan in the same Hyperlum core, just making only 3 cannons. Future characters of the game are spoken and said of a supposed Fiend 5 stars playing Kinish Emily Mavuka Exbalan. For giving an example and the current potential that specifically Kinnick has already exceeded since Cone, I repeat to all the Karis. Inside the game, many can say Phil E. that Mini the Cone Mini, if everyone counts along with Cone and everyone counts Raiden with C2, and many of you have more than one character with Cone and C2. Many have taken Furina C2 for the damage inflicted. Of its ulti and wheel etc. Cone is the most realistic thing that today, after almost 5 years of Genshin, and that, at last, there has been a little increase in rewards in NATLAN, there may be for an account today. Kinnick is not only the best carry inside, but has already surpassed all previous ones, has ceilings superior to most teams of the game already has. Entered directly with your best team without passing any C2 character and 2 4 stars in the top 4-3-2. The pair of gaming teams of the whole game, but the problem, and not a bad problem of Kinish, is that it still has potential to improve as well as Mualani, who will approach the top 6 best teams of the game Kinish today can. Incoming and already is if you got it too with how you was going to say with the gun, but it is that you can have Quinnich too with the weapon free-to-play forging, and can already enter the top only with a weapon free-to-play, but with the C2 as the third carry of the game after Novilette and Arlecchino, having the only difference with them that does not have auto-sustain since Arlecchino and Novilette heal themselves, but having an individual sustained rotation damage so similar to the two of them being able to pass the abyss. Just doing nothing by being able to cart teams or just pass it with a Bennett to Chero and try the Kinish Chero Bennett for you to see how the abyss is flooded without the need of the rest of the characters, and not just having abysmal ceilings with a complete team. As I say, becoming also 3rd, 4th best team of the game, but with the margin of improvement that is still missing. This is the current evolution of the carries of the entire game: Novilette, Arlecchino, Kinish Gaming, and Mualani, and this is a demonstration. Continue the power creep, because still until new characters come out to us, there will be no new characters that enter this top 5 or 6 of the best carries of the whole game, and they're going to keep coming out. Karis, the doubt for this video is finally to leave me in the comments you believe that throughout all NATLAN will come out one more carry, as for example was Arlecchino Alhaitham that came out a little later in the version as a much more powerful carry of Sumeru or Fontaine that overshadows, for example, to Mualani, that I think Kinnick will not do it. But it may be that Mualani will still be very strong too. With their optimal team, with their little problems, but very consistent and fun, you think there is still a missing carry surprise. In all NATLAN, you believe that the Pyro Arcante, whether in a 5-star mini can be a DPS, and that it is this Pyro DPS that, in fact, Power Creep Arlecchino, that in my opinion I see it complicated sincerely, but everything can happen, or maybe not. I know Click or some new DPS Anemo because we have very neat faces, but they're not too roofy we say can give us a surprise to all the players of Genshin Impact. And finally, in the beginning the video I told you what was the maximum damage that you have had in your account. Leave me the comments if anyone has reached the million. You can see in the achievement the Punisher. Between achievements there is a tab that says search, write the Punisher, or just Cass you give him to look for, and that achievement appears. You can see what your maximum damage is now. To finish the video I ask you what your favorite DPS is. Download to comments and see also which is the most chosen and capable carry by the whole community and surprises us and more than carries as Nubiletto Arlecchino. People as preferred have more carries that they like are similar to character design, the character's lore, the story, the personality and other things, and maybe you see many serve them. Cut in the comments little more. This is the evolution of all the carries of Genshin Impact. Leave a good like, a good ulti of Vinez, or write you a good comment too. The algorithm, thanks for enjoying and watching the video, and the channel, thanks for all the support. Thanks for signing up with Panita. For everything that is growing the channel, I think that already in this video I can say thank you for the 150,000 I think yesterday after. From recording this video we have arrived, but as I record videos for 2 days later or so, I don't know that not logically that it is happening while recording it, but we will manifest, and thank you for the 150,000 subscribers now for the 200,000 very quick.